Nightmare mail and husband stole from me. Was divorce my only choice? Okay Reddit, brace yourselves, because the story I'm about to share is a wild ride of betrayal, financial irresponsibility, and a mother-in-law from the depths of hell. It all started with what seemed like a godsend, a chance to move into my mother-in-law's house. I never anticipated it would come to this. My husband and mother-in-law spent my money, and it felt like I was being branded as a freeloader. How dare you spend so much on yourself? That venomous statement, dripping with scorn, still rings in my ears. It was the beginning of the end, the culmination of months of subtle digs and overt manipulation. I remember the day I finally had enough and slammed the door, not just on a room, but on a life I thought I wanted. I remember looking around the two-story house, thinking how unbelievably lucky we were to be offered such a generous helping hand. Megan, isn't this wonderful? Mom's house is big enough for all of us, and Lily will have so much space to play. Jason had gushed, practically bouncing with excitement. I nodded, holding our little Lily close to me, trying to quell the nagging feeling in the back of my mind that something was off. Jason, I hope you'll be comfortable here, Diane had said, her voice dripping with a saccharine sweetness that now makes my skin crawl. I thought it would be easier for Lily, and well, for all of us, to be together. Thank you, Diane, I'd replied, genuinely grateful at the time. I truly believed we were doing the right thing for our family. The first few weeks seemed like a dream come true. Diane would even cook our favorite meals, and Lily adored having her grandmother around. But as the days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, I began to feel a chilling change in the air, a subtle shift in dynamics that slowly eroded my sense of peace. One day, while I was on my laptop in the living room, desperately trying to meet a deadline on an important project, Diane walked in, her eyes narrowed. Commenting another day of leisure for you, huh? She sneered. I had just stepped out of taking a bath. I'm working, Diane, I retorted, trying to keep my voice level. She chuckled, a dry, humorless sound that sent shivers down my spine. In my time, she started, but before I could reply, Jason walked in. Mom, he said, and for a fleeting moment, I thought he was going to defend me. But his tone hinted otherwise, a subtle warning that I didn't heed. Later that evening, when Lily was finally asleep, I tried to talk to Jason. Did you mean what you said earlier? About my job being hard to understand, I asked, my heart pounding in my chest. He shrugged, a dismissive gesture that cut deeper than any words. I mean, you're always at home. It does look like you have a lot of free time. I was taken aback, completely blindsided by his casual cruelty. Jason, just because I work from home doesn't mean I'm not working. My job is demanding, I insisted, fighting back tears. I didn't mean it that way, he mumbled, avoiding my gaze. It's just, different. That night, I lay in bed, reflecting on the insidious changes that had taken root in our lives. It was the house, I realized. The four walls that once seemed so welcoming were now closing in on me, suffocating me with their silent judgment. What I once saw as a heaven was now becoming a prison. Mom's right, Jason commented one evening after dinner, his voice laced with a newfound condescension. You're always on that computer. Do you even see what's happening around the house? I tried to reason with him, to make him understand the value of my work, the contribution I was making to our family. Jason, this is my job, I earn from it, and it helps us maintain our lifestyle. Yeah, right, he scoffed, his words like a slap in the face. The house that once echoed with laughter and joy now felt cold and unwelcoming, a monument to shattered dreams. The illusion of home sweet home was irrevocably shattered. One Friday evening, after tucking Lily into bed, I decided to take a look at our joint bank account. Jason and I had always maintained transparency in our finances, a mutual understanding that trust was paramount. The routine check was just to ensure that we were sticking to our savings plan, especially with the mounting medical expenses for Lily. But this time, the available balance was much lower than I expected, sending a jolt of panic through my veins. Curious, I clicked on the statement to see a list of transactions. My eyes widened in disbelief as I saw several large withdrawals labeled Party Central and numerous purchases from Shop on Couch Premium Package. I felt a mix of confusion and burning anger, a sense of betrayal that threatened to consume me. Pulling out a notepad, I quickly jotted down the figures. Over the past few months, there had been a substantial drain on our savings, and none of it was for household expenses or Lily's medical needs. It was all frivolous spending, selfish indulgences that were jeopardizing our future. The next morning, I approached Jason, my voice trembling with a mixture of apprehension and rage. We need to talk about our account, I began, trying to keep my composure. What about it? He asked, his eyes darting nervously around the room. We've been spending a lot more than we budgeted for, I said, showing him the figures I had jotted down. Oh, he mumbled, avoiding my gaze. The guys and I've been going out on Fridays, just to relax and unwind. It's nothing big. And then came Diane, stepping into the room, ever the opportunist, after overhearing our conversation, ready to defend her reckless behavior. "Oh, that's just some stuff I ordered. I saw some nice things on TV," she chirped, as if it were nothing. "But we can't afford these things right now," I said, my voice rising in frustration. Diane snapped back, her eyes blazing with indignation. "It's just a few things, Megan. Why are you overreacting?" "I'm not overreacting," I exclaimed, my voice cracking with emotion. "We have shared expenses, and we need to save for Lily's needs. We can't spend recklessly," Jason sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I need some time with my friends, and Mom likes those TV products." "What's the big deal?" He was completely missing the point, blinded by his own selfishness and his mother's manipulative influence. "It's not like you don't spend," Jason continued, his voice rising in defense of his mother's actions. "You spend on essentials. You make it sound like we're burning through cash. It's not a crime to indulge once in a while, but it's every week," I exclaimed, my voice trembling with a mixture of anger and despair. The room was thick with tension, the air heavy with unspoken resentments. It was clear that our views on finances were vastly different, that Diane's careless spending and Jason's nonchalant attitude were spiraling out of control. I realized, with a sinking heart, that the promise of a shared future based on mutual understanding and respect was beginning to crumble before my very eyes. This wasn't just about money, it was about trust, about shared responsibilities, about the very foundation of our marriage. I walked away feeling more isolated than ever, the reality of our situation becoming clearer by the day. The once harmonious house was now filled with discord and resentment, a breeding ground for bitterness and animosity. One evening after work, feeling utterly depleted and emotionally drained, I decided to treat myself to something I hadn't done in a long time: shopping. I headed to a nearby boutique, hoping to find something that would lift my spirits, something that would remind me that I was still worthy of joy. I spotted a gorgeous dress, a vibrant splash of color in a sea of gray. As I checked the price tag, I hesitated for a moment. It was slightly over my usual budget for clothing, but then I thought of the countless hours I had poured into my work, the late nights and early mornings I had sacrificed to provide for my family. I deserved this, I told myself, feeling a flicker of joy I hadn't felt in weeks. However, my excitement quickly faded when I walked into the living room, proudly holding my new purchase. Diane and Jason were sitting on the couch, engrossed in a TV show, their faces illuminated by the flickering light. I cleared my throat, hoping to garner some attention, some acknowledgement of my small victory. "Hey, look what I got for the work event next week," I said, pulling out the dress and holding it up for them to see. "That seems expensive," Diane remarked, her voice dripping with disapproval. "It's a bit more than usual, but it's for a special event," I explained, hoping for some support from Jason. Feeling cornered by their disapproval, I replied, "It's from my bonus. I thought it would be okay." Diane scoffed, her eyes rolling dramatically. "After making such a fuss about our expenses," she sneered. Jason chimed in, his voice laced with sarcasm. "Must be nice to be able to afford such luxuries." "It's just one dress, Jason," I exclaimed, my voice rising in frustration. "Can't I treat myself once in a while?" Diane's voice dripped with sarcasm and spite, adding fuel to the already raging fire. The humiliation and anger were overwhelming, a suffocating blanket of negativity that threatened to smother me. I retreated to our room, clutching the dress to my chest, feeling more alone than ever, the weight of their disapproval crushing my spirit. Lily's health had always been fragile, a constant source of worrying and anxiety for me. There were times when I would take days off work to care for her, sacrificing my own needs to ensure that she was safe and comfortable. On one particular Thursday, I received an urgent call from my boss, informing me that I was needed in the office for an essential presentation, a meeting that could potentially make or break my career. I was in a terrible dilemma, torn between my responsibilities as a mother and my obligations as an employee. I couldn't leave Lily alone, not in her fragile state, but I also couldn't afford to jeopardize my job. In a desperate attempt to find a solution, I approached Diane, hoping that she would understand the gravity of the situation and offer to help. "Diane, I have a request," I began, my voice pleading. "Can you please watch over Lily today? Jason too if he can. I have a crucial meeting at work that I can't miss." Diane looked up from her magazine, her expression clearly annoyed. "Again, why can't you handle your work without leaving your sick child?" she snapped, her words like a slap in the face. "I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important," I pleaded, my voice trembling with desperation. "But just this once, please." Diane reluctantly agreed to watch Lily, and Jason was to rush home to help. "Jason, can you come home early just to make sure everything's okay?" I asked, my voice filled with anxiety. Jason, who was scrolling through his phone, seemed distracted and uninterested. Sure, I'll try," he mumbled, his words offering little reassurance. The next day, as I was getting ready for work, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Diane, sending my heart plummeting to my stomach. Sorry dear, my friends just called. I can't watch Lily today. Panicking, I immediately called Jason, hoping that he would be able to step in and save the day. Can you come home? Diane can't watch Lily, I said, my voice trembling with fear. There was a long pause before he replied, a silence that seemed to stretch on for an eternity. Megan, I can't. I've got a lot going on today, he finally said, his voice cold and indifferent. Diane promised she would, and now she's bailing. I need your help, I cried, my voice filled with desperation. I was floored. After a heavy sigh, he said, Okay, I'll leave work early. Relieved, I quickly got dressed and left for work, praying that everything would be all right. Hours later, as I was in the middle of my crucial presentation, I received a call from the school nurse, sending my heart racing with dread. Mrs. Johnson, Lily's fever has spiked and she's in a lot of distress. My heart raced and my hands were shaking. I'll be there right away, I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. When I arrived at the school and saw my little girl, pale and weak, lying on a cot in the nurse's office, my heart broke. I wrapped her in my arms, trying to soothe her, to shield her from the pain and suffering. Why wasn't she at home? Where were Diane or Jason? I thought furiously, my mind racing with anger and disbelief. Upon reaching home, I found the house empty, devoid of any signs of life. My anger surged, a tidal wave of fury threatening to drown me. Where were you? I demanded, my voice trembling with rage. I told you I'd come home early, but the guys wanted to hang out, he replied, his voice nonchalant and unapologetic. Lily was alone and unwell. Do you even care? I shouted, my voice cracking with emotion. What's all this noise? Diane interrupted, her voice laced with annoyance. Lily was left alone, she was sick, and neither of you were there. I exclaimed, holding back tears. Diane rolled her eyes, her expression dismissive. You always make a scene. She's just a kid. She bounced back. I was at my wit's end, my spirit broken, my heart aching with despair. This is not a home, I whispered, my voice barely audible. I can't do this anymore. What are you saying? Jason asked, his brow furrowed in confusion. I'm saying this isn't working. We need to make changes, I said, my voice filled with a newfound resolve. The room was thick with tension, the air heavy with unspoken resentments. Diane looked smug, as if she had been expecting this all along, while Jason seemed genuinely confused, unable to comprehend the depth of my despair. As for me, it was clear that this was the breaking point, the moment when I finally realized that things had to change, that I couldn't continue living in this toxic environment. The days that followed were filled with introspection, a period of intense self-reflection as I grappled with the weight of my decision. The house was eerily quiet, the silence broken only by the occasional murmur of voices, the hushed whispers that seemed to amplify the emptiness within me. There were no conversations, no laughter, no shared moments of joy, only a palpable sense of unease and discontent. One evening, as I was sitting alone in my room, lost in my thoughts, there was a soft knock at the door. It was Lily, her tiny face solemn, her eyes filled with a sadness that mirrored my own. She climbed onto the bed beside me, her small body trembling slightly. Mommy, why is everyone so sad? She asked, her innocent words piercing my heart. I took a deep breath, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill over. Sometimes, adults have disagreements, sweetie, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She hugged her teddy bear tight, her expression troubled. I don't like it. I want everyone to be happy, she said, her words striking a chord deep within my soul. I realized, in that moment, that I had to make a change, not just for my own well-being, but for the sake of my daughter, for her happiness, for her future. The next morning, I met with a lawyer to discuss the possibility of a divorce. As we spoke, it became evident that while the journey wouldn't be easy, it was a necessary step, a painful but essential act of self-preservation. I realized that I deserved more than a life of misery and resentment, that Lily deserved a mother who was happy and fulfilled, and that I had to make a choice. To choose my own well-being and the well-being of my daughter over a marriage that had become toxic and destructive. A few days later, I mustered up the courage to talk to Jason, to tell him that I had made a decision that would change our lives forever. We need to talk, I began, my voice trembling with anxiety. About what? This? He asked, his tone dismissive. Not this again, he huffed. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation that was to come. Jason, I've decided to file for divorce, I said, my voice firm but filled with sadness. He looked at me, his eyes filled with disbelief. You're overreacting, we just hit a rough patch, he protested, his voice laced with desperation. She deserves better, I said softly, my voice barely audible. He looked away, his expression unreadable. So, you're just giving up on us, he asked, his voice filled with bitterness. There was a long pause before he finally spoke, his words laced with resignation. Fine, if that's what you want. The following week, as I packed my belongings, Diane stood in the doorway, watching me with a smug expression on her face. She looked at the boxes and scoffed. Running away, she sneered, her voice dripping with contempt. I looked at her, my gaze unwavering. Starting fresh, I replied, my voice filled with a newfound confidence. She smirked, her eyes filled with malice. You think you'll manage on your own, she taunted, her words laced with doubt. For Lily, I'll manage anything, I replied with determination, my voice ringing with conviction. Diane just huffed and left the room, her anger simmering beneath the surface. The day we moved out was incredibly emotional, a bittersweet mix of sadness and relief. The house that once held dreams and promises was now just a painful reminder of what was lost, a symbol of shattered illusions and broken vows. As I locked the door for the last time, tears streamed down my face, a silent farewell to a life that could have been. Lily held my hand tightly, her small fingers intertwined with mine, offering me a silent reassurance that we were in this together. It'll be okay, right, Mommy? She asked, her voice filled with a childlike innocence that melted my heart. I smiled at her, my eyes filled with love and determination. Yes, sweetie, I replied, my voice ringing with conviction. We'll be just fine. Our new apartment was cozy and small, a far cry from the spacious house we had left behind. But it was ours, a sanctuary free from the negativity and toxicity that had consumed our lives. I remember the first night we moved in, surrounded by boxes and unfamiliar surroundings, feeling a sense of both exhaustion and exhilaration. As we lay there listening to the sounds of the city outside, Lily whispered, I like it here. I kissed her forehead, my heart swelling with love. Me too, sweetie, I replied, my voice filled with gratitude. It's our new beginning. The next few weeks were incredibly busy, filled with the challenges of settling into a new home, navigating the legal complexities of the divorce, and juggling the demands of my work and motherhood. But amidst the chaos and uncertainty, I found strength in unexpected places, drawing support from my friends, my family, and my colleagues. My work colleagues were incredibly supportive, especially my boss, who understood the challenges I was facing and offered me words of encouragement and reassurance. One evening, as I was making dinner, there was a knock on the door. It was Mrs. Patterson, our neighbor, a kind and elderly woman who had offered us a warm welcome to the building. She held out a freshly baked pie, her eyes twinkling with warmth. I thought you two could use a warm welcome, she said, her voice gentle and kind. I smiled, touched by her gesture. Thank you, Mrs. Patterson, I replied, my voice filled with gratitude. That's really sweet. She smiled back, her eyes filled with compassion. Just call me June, and feel free to reach out at any time, dear. The community around us was warm and welcoming, a supportive network of people who embraced us with open arms. Slowly, the shadows of our past began to fade as Lily and I got involved in various activities. Lily joined a dance class and made new friends, and I started volunteering at a local charity, finding fulfillment in helping others. One evening, as Lily and I sat on our balcony, watching the city lights twinkle in the distance, Lily asked a question that took me by surprise. Mommy, do you think Daddy misses us? She asked, her voice filled with a childlike curiosity. The question took me by surprise, and I paused for a moment, searching for the right words. I'm sure he does, in his own way, I replied, my voice soft and gentle. I sometimes miss the big house, she continued, her brow furrowed in thought. But do you like it here? I asked, my voice filled with hope. She smiled, her eyes sparkling with joy. Yes, she replied, her voice filled with enthusiasm. I have new friends. We both took each day as it came, cherishing the small moments of joy and finding strength in each other's love. I began to get a firm grip on our expenses, carefully budgeting our money and making smart financial decisions. My background in finance certainly came in handy, allowing me to navigate the challenges of single parenthood with confidence and resourcefulness. One day, I received a call from an old college friend, Mark, who had been following my career with interest. Megan, it's been ages, how have you been? He asked, his voice filled with warmth. We chatted for a while, catching up on old times, and then he casually mentioned that his company, a venture capital firm, was looking for investors in a promising new tech startup. I was initially hesitant, but after doing my due diligence and researching the company, I decided to take a chance and invest a portion of my savings. To my surprise, the venture took off, exceeding all expectations and generating substantial returns. Suddenly, our financial situation changed for the better, and I found myself in a position of greater security and stability. But more than the money, it was the sense of accomplishment that meant the world to me, the feeling that I had overcome adversity and built a better future for myself and my daughter. One evening, June invited us over for dinner, a casual gathering of friends and neighbors. As we sat around her dining table, sharing stories and laughter, she looked at me with a twinkle in her eye. You've done well, Megan, she said, her voice filled with admiration. I admire your strength and your resilience. I smiled, touched by her words. Thank you, June, I replied, my voice filled with gratitude. It's been a journey, and it's just the beginning, she added, her gaze shifting to Lily, who was busy with her dessert. Looking at Lily, who was busy with her dessert, I realized she was right. We had faced our fair share of challenges, but we had emerged stronger and more resilient. This was indeed a new beginning, a chance to create a life filled with love, joy, and purpose. A few months after my new beginning, just when I thought I had finally put the past behind me, my phone buzzed with a name I hadn't seen in a long while. Jason. A knot of anxiety tightened in my stomach as I answered the call, bracing myself for whatever he had to say. Hello,